Zenless Zone Zero, ZZZ, Triple Z, Gooner Game, Zzz. Measuring the success of a video game nowadays is an incredibly hard thing to do. Measuring the success of a gacha game is a completely different story. Yet despite this, in the never-ending conflict of tribalism within the gacha space, it hasn't stopped many from trying, and they go at it anyway. From scuffed revenue reports, to vibe checks based on a marketing trailer, and most notably, viewer engagement on a single live streaming platform. Today, I want to talk about the obsession with Twitch Tracker and how it's being used to spin a narrative that Zenless Zone Zero is a game that is not worth your time. To start off with, we need to lay a foundation for why content creators and hardcore gamers frequently use these kinds of metrics and analytics to draw conclusions on the success of a video game. For over a decade now, large game corporations have slowly but gradually stopped openly presenting their sales and metrics of video games. I can only speculate on the reasons, either to present a false sense of financial security to shareholders, or to prevent a chilling effect from existing players if the information got out. Nowadays, companies still use present metrics and data to the public about their game's performance, but it's dressed up in disingenuous language like players or downloads instead of sales or copies sold to hoodwink suspecting players into believing their games are a success. In response to this, many hardcore players and content creators have opted to make their own interpretation of a game's success through the use of Steam charts, Google Trends, and the aforementioned Twitch viewership. Now, whether you see this approach as gamers' one and only means of fighting back, or see it as a glorified scare tactic, is a conversation for another day. With all of this being said, however, I don't believe the same metrics and engagement tracking is as effective when used in the context of the gacha gaming industry. The first issue we see with the use of Twitch Tracker is that viewership is not a one-to-one direct correlation to gacha spending. The gacha genre is almost exclusively a free-to-play environment, and an overwhelmingly majority of a gacha game's content can be experienced and enjoyed without spending any money. Just because one gacha game has 1,000 or 2 additional average monthly viewers over another gacha game doesn't instantly translate to a higher monthly revenue. It all comes down to the spending habits of each individual player. Yes, a higher viewership gives a more favorable likelihood of higher revenue, but it's not a guarantee. The second issue I want to present is that Twitch live streams are personality-driven and not game-driven. An overwhelming majority of Twitch viewers are coming for the individuals that Twitch platforms, not the games that an individual may decide to play. All it takes to prove my point is to look at the top categories and see that the Just Chatting section remains the top performing category every single time, without fail. To further prove my point, a game's popularity on Twitch is not a direct correlation to quality. Destiny 2, World of Warcraft, and Overwatch 2 are all games that are regarded to be in the worst game states they have ever been since their release. Despite this, they have an incredibly high viewership ranking thanks to a handful of popular personalities on the platform. Now, if you want to make a point that Zenless Zone Zero is not a profitable game for content creators to cover, then sure, yeah, I could see where you're coming from. However, that is an issue for the content creators to sort out, not Hoyoverse. The third issue that exists is that the gacha viewership on Twitch is too small of a sample size to work with, leaving out Genshin Impact because, of course, Genshin is successful. None of the remaining big 4 gacha games can consistently maintain a 2-month streak of more than 5,000 average viewers for their respective games. Yet this is somehow a sample size big enough to make massive, sweeping generalizations for entire worldwide success and popularity. I will repeat myself. We are using a consistent sample size of no more than 5,000 to determine the success of a gacha game on a website primarily based in a region of the world that is regularly regarded as the third wheel when it comes to taking feedback or even just not being treated like absolute shit. Unless you're Girls Frontline 2, then the global players are the catered to audience, and the CN players are effectively beta testers for our version. Thanks for the good gacha game, boys. I hope the Raymond controversy you guys started was all worth it. And while we're still talking about actual Twitch tracker numbers, I've got a fun thing to show you. Here's Punishing Gray Raven's viewership. You know, the more appropriate game to compare Zenless Zone Zero to? And if anyone is curious, here's Honkai Impact 3's viewership. Yes, the pre-Genshin Hoyo game that's 3 years older than PGR and has concluded the Part 1 stories of Kiana, Mei, and Bronya in favor of new characters no one cares about, is still putting out better numbers than Kuro's hack and slash game. Funny how the game WoW players like to go on and on about being a failure has their attention more than a game many of them don't even know about if you were to say its name out loud to them, despite being the previous game that their darling company worked on. Fourth issue, and this is a big one. Twitch is not even the most popular social media site on the internet and therefore makes for a weaker source for an argument of success. To no one's surprise, that title goes to YouTube, with a confirmed monthly active user count of 2.7 billion. More than 10 times that of Twitch's roughly 240 million by comparison. So with that in mind, let's actually compare the official YouTube channels of ZZZ and WooWa and see what they're not telling you. Both games have an EN and a JP YouTube channel, and starting off with subscriber count and recent output from both, you'll actually notice that both games are very close to each other in popularity. A fact that directly conflicts with the cherry-picked narrative that the WooWa side would want you to believe. And it gets even better, because I'm only just showing the latest videos of the main channels. If you were to look at the most popular uploads on the main channel, followed by the recent output of the JP channels and their respective most popular videos, it's not even close, as Zenless Zone Zero sweeps all three and completely curb stomps the shit out of Wuthering Waves. If you want to make an argument for Twitch live streams as a measurement for engagement with a gacha game, then the same logic has to apply to YouTube content as well. If you are refusing to do so, then you are just cherry-picking analytics to paint a disingenuous picture. The last and most damning issue that calls into question the validity of the Twitch tracker argument is the omission of Bilibili from all discussion regarding popularity of a gacha game. Let me reiterate and add some additional facts. Twitch has a confirmed monthly active user count of 240 million users, with 35 million users daily. Bilibili has 368 million confirmed active users and a daily user count of 107 million. That's 1.5 times more than monthly users on Twitch and roughly 3 times more daily users. For a genre of video games that are primarily marketed to and see higher profits in Eastern countries when compared to the West. And as a quick aside for a moment, Google is apparently blocked in China, so Google Trends 2 is an incomplete source of information as well. But because an overwhelming number of global players, myself included, do not understand the language of Eastern countries, it's nearly impossible to navigate and gather information from Bilibili and other Eastern sites. So instead, what we are seeing is that people are taking a sample size of less than 5,000 viewers on an American live streaming site that's currently in the process of falling apart due to selective moderation and increasingly intrusive ad integration and business models, and projecting that data onto entire countries with completely different trends, tastes, value judgments, and spending habits. In other words, it's the US once again doing what it does best and assuming it knows better than everyone else and telling them what to think and what to do. Before I close out the video, I want to bring up an example of how analytics alone do not directly correlate to success if you need to strip away all nuance and context to prove your point. Jason Schreier, a noteworthy games journalist for the site Kotaku, recently made a fool of himself for attempting to prop up Dragon Age The Veilguard following its release by tweeting Steam chart data of The Veilguard at its all-time peak in an attempt to own the chuds. What Jason Schreier failed to realize was how Dragon Age The Veilguard was a game that went through an almost 10-year development hell starting in 2015, and a peak player count of less than 90,000 on Steam wasn't going to cut it for such a long and expensive development process. The Veilguard's potential for post-launch content updates was axed as the game's active development ended at the start of 2025, only a couple months after it released. And a Bloomberg article would come out with Electronic Arts reporting that the Veilguard missed sales expectations by nearly half of what EA was hoping for. Once again, using vague language in the article by using a statistic of 1.5 million players instead of actual sales numbers or profits. What I'm trying to get at is information like Twitch Tracker can have its use cases and value in determining the success of a video game. However, gacha games are far too much of an anomaly in the games industry for these same analytics to work on their own. If you cannot bring all the evidence to the table, you cannot make a compelling case. If you are a content creator, consider the possibility that those whom don't agree with you may accuse you of having a conflict of interest in seeing your respective gacha game of choice be propped up based on how you present your data and information. And before anyone says anything, I want to remind you all that I'm not telling you to play Zenless Zone Zero over Wuthering Waves or vice versa. I'm telling you to play Girls Frontline 2. Please, 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 please. And with that, I have said all I really wanted to about the use of Twitch Tracker to effectively pocket watch the success of Zenless Zone Zero. To go off topic for a second, I've actually yet to play the 2.1 story content due to getting hammered with longer work shifts at my job lately. I won't be seeing any days off until nearly halfway into next week, but when I finally get a day to myself, I will sit down and dedicate myself to seeing what the patch is all about, and I look forward to it. But until then, this has been Arikado Zodan, and I'm clocking out.